So the Internet of Things has not lived up to the hype that people in this industry expected it would. And I don't mean that by, data isn't being delivered as it should. It is, and that data is really valuable to our customers. But the number of data points people are bringing in is a lot smaller than it should be. There's an artificial ceiling. And when we look at that, if you just look at the projections here, the IBM Watson team back in 2012 said by 2015, 3 years later, they expected to have 1 billion IoT devices out there in the world. I'm sorry, 1 trillion IoT devices out there in the world, right? That's a huge number of data points and sensors out there. By the time we actually got to 2015, we were nowhere near close to that. So a few years later, Cisco took a swag at it and said, hey, how many IoT devices should we see in the next few years out in the market? And they said 50 billion, a much, much smaller number. 2020 is here today, and we don't have near that number of sensors out in the world. And it continues to shrink. And we think there's a couple of reasons why we're not getting these data points in as we should. Everybody understands the value of them, but nobody's been able to actually commission them. So we have a couple of reasons why we think that is. One, batteries. Batteries in and of themselves undermine the value of IoT. It's really difficult to just think about the sheer number of batteries that 1 trillion sensors would require to be out there in the world. If you were going to wire up these assets, right, that's one huge problem that's prevented people for decades from getting all the data they wanted. But if you think about putting batteries and then going back to replace those batteries, that's another problem entirely. So if we had 1 trillion of those sensors out there on a 10-year battery life, which is a better battery life than I've seen on any sensor out in the field, that'd still be 274 million replacements per day. And the mass majority of those batteries are not recyclable, so they're ending up in landfills. What's wrong with, batteries from a cost standpoint above the logistical nightmare? We want all these things like predictive maintenance, insights that flow all the time from our assets, being able to gather the state of an asset that's out there in the field right away without having to wire it up. But they add costs, and it's not just a matter of paying for the batteries. There's costs to these that involve going back and making trips to the sensors themselves. So here we look at, the real-time cost, not global, but actually in your plant. If you think about, we're going to put 500 of these assets on, how many people you'd need to do that. And I haven't met a plant manager yet who has people who are dedicated just to going around replacing batteries. There is no full-time battery replacement operator I've met. So it just talks about the artificially low ceiling we have for deploying these sensors at scale. The sensors themselves have limitations too. There's a limited number of transmissions that a battery-powered sensor can do. In order to get that 10-year stated battery life, they're going to ration out how often they broadcast back, so you're getting fewer data points than you actually need. And as a result, it just limits the scale of what you're actually able to monitor. Another reason I think that we've seen that is preventing people from adopting the Internet of Things at scale, big scale, is that these integrations are fragmented inherently. There are people who will provide you a sensor, or they'll provide you a cloud analytics platform. They might be providing gateways, but it's not all brought in together. We talked to a company that wanted to take on a project around steam trap monitoring, and when they had their first meeting, 4 different vendors from 4 different companies were there to deliver each piece of this solution. There was no one-stop shop for that. So that was another kind of artificial ceiling there. Trying to bring this in and become your own general contractor for setting up a sensor and network system from scratch is problematic.